Welcome to episode 25 of Fate Makes Story Edition, where I let the universe decide my make, and oh my god, this was by far the most complicated make that we've had so far in the series. You probably won't expect from looking at a keychain, because how can a keychain be complicated? You will see. We got kawaii for the aesthetic, which we have had once before. I really want some of the new options, because I added so many new ones, and we have not had many of them yet, but anyway. For the number of colours, we got the dreaded 6, which makes everything so much more difficult, because the odds of getting 6 colours that all perfectly match together is not an easy task, but we actually, little spoiler, we got very lucky with this. For our first colour, we got a bright cherry red, and for the second colour, got this really pretty lilac. For the third, we got a kind of dark teal kind of colour, and for the fourth, we got a lighter version of that same colour pretty much, just like a light minty kind of greeny colour. For number 5, we got a very pretty peachy baby pink, and for our final colour, we got, I don't even remember, a dark burnt orange kind of colour. So yeah, I think we got a very pretty colour palette considering how bad that could have gone. For our metal colour, we actually got a You Choose, which was very nice. And then finally, for our wild card, we got the bead loom, which we have not actually had this so far in the series, even though this is not actually a new option. But if you know what a bead loom is, then you understand why this made this keychain so freaking complicated. And if not, then stay tuned. But first things first, we obviously have to design it. So I actually found this really pretty star-shaped lilac keychain, which I thought would be absolutely perfect. But the main part of the designing process was figuring out what sort of image I was going to put on the bead loom. So I went through and picked out all of my bead colors. And as soon as I put them in the dish together, my brain went straight to the Little Mermaid, which you can argue isn't necessarily kawaii in the most typical sense, but I do still think it matches. And come on, like the fact that we got every single color to match the Little Mermaid was too big of a coincidence not to use. So once I had decided on the image that I was going to use, I started designing the rest of the keychain. So if you don't know what a bead loom is, it basically allows you to make images and like names and that kind of thing out of beads in sort of like a pixel art format, if that makes sense. It's such a cool technique, but this was actually my first time properly trying it. I tried it once before, but I hadn't learned how to like properly tie it off or anything. So this was my first time properly making a finished piece with the bead loom, so a lot of pressure. Obviously, you have to stay tuned if you want to see how it ended up going. As an extra little dangling charm from the keychain, I also added these cute little turtle and starfish beads, and here was the finished design. So the first step was figuring out the pixel art for the bead loom. So I actually ended up using this free website called Beadographer. This is not like sponsored or anything, but this was so useful for making my design and will definitely be what I use for it in the future. So if you are going to start doing things with a bead loom, would definitely recommend. So to actually make the design, I imported that image and just changed the opacity so that I could see through it a little bit, and then just drew over the basic shapes that I could see only using the 6 colors that we picked. And then once I was finished, I just removed that image, did a couple of little touch-ups, and then here was my pattern. But before I actually started working on the bead loom, I just figured I might as well get the little extra charm done and out of the way first. So I just used my 1-step looper to put eye pins through both of them. Actually, technically I used a flathead pin for the turtle, but you know what I mean. I then attached those together with jump rings and added those to the keychain, and then it was bead loom time. And honestly, the actual beading part is really fun, but actually having to set it up is so tedious and so complicated, and you have so many threads that you're working with. But then once I had finally got everything set up, we could actually get to beading. So you basically just go 1 row at a time, and each pixel is a bead basically. So you're just threading on the beads that you see in that row. Line those beads up underneath the threads, and then thread through with the needle once underneath and once back over the top to lock it in place. It sounds kind of complicated, but you do pick it up really quickly. And once you got the hang of it, it is so much fun. I would definitely recommend if you're looking for a new summer hobby. But then I realized that I was running into an issue where the image was kind of getting squished because the beads were like not the same proportion as the pixels. And I'd also accidentally done 1 less row than I'd intended to as well, so I had to adjust it quite a lot. But I just took a screenshot of the original design and then opened it up into Procreate and just used my pen tool to just go in and make any changes that I needed to, and then just carried on as normal. There were quite a few mistakes I made in this, and like certain times where like the teal and the like minty color looked too similar to where I kind of messed them up, but eventually got to the end and I think it looks enough like a mermaid to pass as a mermaid, so can't complain too much. So then once I'd finished, I just threaded and like weaved through all of my loose threads and then cut it off the loom, which was as scary as it looks, before tying them off and adding these little slider clasps, which I used a tutorial for this, so Google this because I'm not gonna explain it well enough. Also, I ended up going with silver in the end because obviously I had a You Choose for the metal color, because I actually only have these slider ends in silver and gold, so those were actually my only options anyway. Don't worry, I have ordered some in different metal colors, they just have not arrived yet. But anyway, here is the final reveal of the finished keychain. I am so happy with how it turned out. The only annoying part is this one bead that is like slightly longer than the rest of them, and so it kind of warps the side of it, but I think it's a pretty good first attempt. But let me know what you think. Thank you for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in episode 26. Welcome to episode 24 of Fate Makes Jewelry Edition, where I let the universe decide my make, and today I kind of accidentally gave myself 2 wild cards. But starting off with our type of jewelry, so we got a long necklace, which is actually one of our new options, but similarly to the charm bracelet that we got in the last episode, obviously we've had necklaces in the past, it's just never been specified what type. We got Whimsy Y2K for the aesthetic, which is one of my favorites. We've only had it once before, I think, and then we got 2 colors for this make, which for a long necklace, obviously 2 colors isn't very many, but it does make it much easier to get colors that at least go together. We got brown for the first color, which isn't the most exciting, but at least it definitely fits the aesthetic. And then for the second color, we actually got blue, which I was really happy about because I love the brown and blue color combination. Now onto our metal color, and we actually got bronze for this, which actually would have probably been the one that I would have picked because I think it matches the colors and the aesthetic really well. But just as I thought this was going to be a nice, easy make, onto our wild card, we got 1 bead type, which suddenly just made this challenge so much harder. So since we only had 1 bead type, the design process was pretty straightforward, but kind of annoying because I was so limited to what I could do with it. I decided to go for glass beads as my 1 bead type because I knew that I had a lot of brown and blue ones, and also because a lot of them have gorgeous bronze detailing, so I went through all of my glass beads and picked out all of the brown and blue ones. In there I did manage to find some glass mushroom beads in both brown and blue, which I thought would work perfectly as like a pendant in the middle of the necklace since it matches the aesthetic pretty well. And then also mixed in there was this bronze heart bead frame, which I completely forgot that I even had, but was a very happy accident because obviously we can only use 1 type of bead, but bead frames and charms and spaces and that kind of thing aren't included in that. So I decided to add a few of those to make the design a little bit more interesting considering we were so limited. Here was the final bead soup. I really like the color combination of this. I just think it looks really pretty, but obviously we're quite limited to how much we can really associate it with the Whimsy Y2K aesthetic, so I did my best, I'm sorry. So I pretty much just had to go for like a basic bead chain with a pendant and a couple of bronze charms, but I did end up adding a few more elements in the actual making process. At this point I realized that I didn't actually have enough beads to make a long necklace, so I ended up having to go through all of my other glass beads, just like the plain solid color ones. But it actually worked out because these were the only ones that were small enough to fit inside of the bead frames anyway. As a finishing touch, I added these cute little bronze butterfly charms, and then here was the final design. Annoyingly, I don't actually have any bronze eye pins right now, so I had to individually make each one with flathead pins because now that we've obviously added a metal color category, I now need every kind of pin, clasp, and jump ring and everything in every single metal color. So I have done a humongous bead order, but annoyingly it isn't arriving for a couple more days, but get excited because there is a huge bead haul coming. I'm so excited. Anyway, once I'd made all of my flathead pins into eye pins, I could then just go in and prep all of my beads as normal. For the mushroom, I just used a regular flathead pin, but it was actually too small and just went right through it, so to fix that I just added a tiny little bronze spacer bead, and that was enough to hold it in place. Once all my beads were prepped, I then just used some bronze jump rings to connect all of the beads together, but at this point the necklace still wasn't long enough. I count a long necklace as being able to fit over my head without needing to use the clasp, and this it definitely wouldn't have, so I extended it with some bronze chain, which to be fair I wasn't mad about because it actually made the necklace much more comfortable around the back of the neck. I added the fastening and the mushroom pendant, but as for the butterfly charms, I didn't really like how they sat because they kind of just looked like they got a bit lost, so I took these bronze little like knot spacers and used that as kind of a middleman between the butterflies and the necklace just to space them out a bit more, but I actually really preferred how this looked because it just added a nice little extra detail as well. And then obviously I said I kind of gave myself 2 wild cards in this episode because I realized by the time I'd finished making the necklace that I never actually drew a design. So I just quickly drew one out at the end anyway, just because if you don't already know, if you buy any of my Fate makes, I do send the original design sketch as well. Speaking of which, if you do want to buy the necklace from this video or any other of the Fate makes that I make in April, they will all be launching on my Etsy at the end of the month on the 30th of April at 6 p.m. BST. And with that being said, here is the final reveal of this necklace, and given the very tight restrictions that we were under, I actually am pretty happy with how this turned out, but let me know what you think. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all in episode 25.
After months of sassy spectacles, you'd think I'd run out of ideas. But I'm back today with something I've never tried before. Despite the fact that I don't actually wear glasses myself, they've become a big part of my life in the last few months, and I notice people's glasses a lot when I'm out and about. A few people have suggested adding a glasses chain. I'd been sort of passively thinking about how I would do it, and then I was at the dentist last week and I saw this lady with this epic beaded glasses chain. Fortunately, there was a craft store right next door to the dentist, so I wandered around that store and ended up spending over $100 on beads, which was a questionable financial choice. This is called nichrome wire, and it's able to withstand the temperatures that the kiln gets to when I fire my pieces. I added attachments at the side of the glasses and then on the back of the pot. I was inspired by the random lady at the dentist, who had really big tortoiseshell frames and a chunky beaded chain, and who will never know that she was such a source of inspiration. I'm still perfecting my tortoiseshell look. I found that the glazes react differently on different clay bodies, and I've never really successfully done a lighter tortoiseshell. So for this planter, I tried to go really light on the black spots. Once she came out of the kiln, I didn't like how the initial beads I was planning to use looked. Fortunately, I guess I had a ton of extra, so I chose this green chain. Ultimately, I'm not crazy about this pot, but I think it was a good first try. I wanted the chain to dangle like it would if you were wearing them around your neck, but I think next time I'd like to try smaller glasses and maybe modify where I put those attachments. And I'm not super crazy about the final tortoise shell, but I do love experimenting and I love when you send me design ideas. What do you think about the chain? And what should I try next?
I felt the need to make a early 2000s elementary school PE storage closet. It was crucial that we made this historically accurate, so I added a bunch of little details and I even epoxied the floor. I'm also adding some of that really nasty fluorescent lighting. I started looking through my mini drawer and found this shelf and these little tiny lockers, and I also found this little UPS box. I wanted to add a ton of little details in here, so I started making a bunch of stuff out of clay. I made these little parachutes, but I wanted them to look like they were folded up, so I kind of scrunched them together. Parachutes were always my favorite thing in PE as a kid. I made this little basket, and then I also made a bunch of little jump ropes, and I wanted to add kind of a trash can in the corner, so I made one, and I ended up burning it in the freaking oven, and I was so sad, but it's okay, we painted it later on. I made a ton more little balls, and then I added a sticker to the trash can and added wheels to it, and then I made those little rolly cart things, the ones that you would literally run over your fingers with. Those hurt so bad. But I also made this little cone and a bunch of little rings to go on the cone. I also made a bunch of little hula hoops. Keep in mind I'm using polymer clay for all of this. And then I wanted to make a little hook for all the little jump ropes, so I used this popsicle stick that I stained. And then it all came out of the oven. I started piecing everything together. I realized it was missing something, so I made this little old school clock. Hands down, my favorite part of the whole process is getting to look at everything before I actually put it in the box. And without further ado, here's our little PE elementary school storage closet. This was so fun to make. I'm super happy with how it turned out. I love you guys so much. Have the best day. Bye!
Yeah, I made this little rat a pair of Crocs. I'm unemployed, that's why I did it, and it certainly rocks. I took 1,000 photos of his feet. I got this 3D model of him, he looks so neat. And then I simply sculpted Crocs around and printed, sanded, painted clean. I'm about to put the Crocs on him, then something intervened. I looked down real quick and noticed a tiny snail, and so I gave him a friend and I made him to scale. And now that he has a date, I can finally move on. I made this little cat a CD of this here very song, and I got his friend a toy and it's picked out from a cat, and I know that he'll enjoy it, and that is a fact. I noticed this lizard was hidden, so I took a photo and made him feel seen. Then I put the photo in the front. Now he's looking so nice, he's looking so clean. I put a top hat on the top hat, no one can top that. I put a top hat on the caterpillar, no one can stop that. Before I got to Alice, put the Crocs on the rat. Then I gave him some gibbets, I thought his personality matched. When I finally got to Alice and I looked right in her eyes, knew what I had to do, and yes, it's finally time. I noticed the sculpture was for the late sculptor's wife, so I made her some flowers, and yes, I made them real nice. I traveled to her grave where she laid to rest, and then I showed her what I did. I hope she was impressed.
Welcome to episode 20 of Fate Makes Jewelry Edition, where I let the universe decide my make, except the universe hates me. Technically, this should be episode 21, because I actually filmed episode 20 this morning, made this a beautiful pair of earrings, and then the entire video deleted itself. I'll still be selling these pair of earrings on Etsy anyway, along with what we make in today's episode, which obviously let's get to making right now. So for our type of jewelry, we got a keychain, which is a pretty nice, simple one, so I was very grateful for that. And for aesthetic, we got movie inspired, which is one of my favorite aesthetics, so the universe was starting to redeem itself a little bit here. I ended up getting stuck with 6 colors for the original version of today's episode, so I was very happy to only get 2 colors for this make because I was so much easier. The universe was being nice to me and gave me a you choose for the first of those 2 colors, and the other color that we got was blue, and immediately my brain just went straight to Coraline, so I picked yellow for the other color. And then finally for our wild card, I got shrink plastic, which was actually the same wild card that I got in the original deleted episode, so that kind of works out pretty well. Here was our final board, and I have to say I was actually pretty happy with the options that we did get, so can't be too mad. As I said, I decided to go for Coraline for for the inspiration for this keychain, so I just had a look through Pinterest to see what specific elements that we could include. It's kind of weird that my brain went straight to Coraline for this make, because I literally think I've only seen Coraline once when I was like a child, and the only thing I remember from it was having nightmares for like a week afterwards, so don't know what that's about. But anyway, I decided to take inspiration from the button eyes, obviously, and the swirly tunnel thing, and just like stars and that kind of stuff. But I didn't have too specific of an idea at this point, so I just had to look through my bead collection to see what we were working with. First thing I found was this like puffy yellow star charm, which I actually bought specifically to make a Coraline themed bracelet for my sister like a year ago, because that's her favorite film. Also found a bunch of other star charms and a lot of different varieties of swirls. This blue star charm, and then I came across these cat beads. I completely forgot I had because I've literally never used them, but I just thought that the blue cat looked exactly like the cat from the film, and even though it is black, I decided, you know what, I have free will and the universe can screw with me, so I can screw with it and I can decide to use black in this make because I can do what I want. Anyway, other than that, I just found some other just like round beads in all the different colors. The last two beads that you just saw there do look black, but they weren't. They are actually dark blue. I'm not that much of a rebel, don't worry. Here was the finished bead soup, and it just does look very Coraline. I was getting very inspired by this little bowl, so I got to designing, and obviously the only part that we needed to design still was the shrink plastic that we were going to use for this, so I decided to go for a button shape and actually use the hole punch to cut out the actual holes in the button that I could then attach jump rings to. Obviously there's 4 holes in the button, so obviously one of them needs to attach to the actual key ring, and then the other 3 I decided to just add like 3 hanging beaded strands. Well, actually technically only 2 beaded strands, and then for the third one I just used some silver chain and attached a bunch of different charms to. So here was the final design, and then the first part of the actual making process was to make the shrink plastic charm. So I grabbed my sheet of shrink plastic that I had already used this morning for the last make. Anyway, sorry, I'm gonna get over it, I promise. I used my water bottle to trace around to get a perfect circle, but actually the first time I tried it I somehow like went off the edge. I don't know how that happened, but anyway, managed to get it right the second time, and then did the same thing with the base of a glass to get the inner circle, and then just colored that in with colored pencil, and oh, that's satisfying, isn't it? Wow, okay. Anyway, I cut that out with scissors, and then I used the hole punch to cut out the holes in the button, but it was at that point that I realized that this was actually going to be way too big, and so I literally just had to repeat that entire process for a smaller button. But in hindsight, this was a good decision because this is the one that I ended up using in the end, and it would have been a lot more annoying to finish baking it and everything and then decide that I needed to redo it. So this is what it looked like when it came out of the oven, and then I just started out laying all the rest of my beads out. One of my favorite parts of this keychain that was like kind of accidental is that the hole in the cat bead goes from side to side rather than up and down, and so it's like sideways in the actual keychain, which normally would be like a negative thing, but obviously in the film he has a little wonky head. Like my sister's cat actually does the same thing, and so if anything it's just accurate to the movie, so I love that. Anyway, this was the finished layout that I came up with. I prepped all of my beads with eye pins, and if I look like I'm over it in this video, it's because I was. Anyway, I started out by making the 2 beaded strands, which basically was just attaching all of those beads that I just prepped together with jump rings. So this was at the finished first strand, and then just did that same thing with the second one, which this is how that one turned out. And then finally just had to do the little chain strand. I wanted the length of this one to kind of sit somewhere in between the first 2, so I just cut off a little length of that. I attached the biggest charm, which was the little swirly star, to the end, and then the rest of them I just kind of spread out up the rest of the chain. This is what it looked like when they were all attached, and then finally I just needed to attach all of the strands to the little button shrink plastic charm that we made. Also, for everyone wondering about my little ring tool, it was literally 57p off of Temu, so you're welcome. I finished off by attaching it to the keyring, and then this was the finished keychain, and I actually am so happy with how it turned out, even though obviously it's not the best circumstances of how we got here, but we got something very beautiful out of it, so can't complain too much. But let me know, do you think the universe has redeemed itself after this? This is now for sale on my Etsy along with the earrings that I showed in the beginning of the video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think, and I will see you guys in episode 21. Welcome to episode 19 of Fate Make Story Edition, where I let the universe decide my make, and we kind of had to speedrun this one because as I'm doing this voiceover now, I need to leave for uni in literally half an hour. So for our type of jewelry, we got a You Choose, which you might remember we actually got this in the last episode and I put it back, so this was the universe giving me it back, which was very nice. And for the aesthetic, we got Minimalist, which is one that we have not had before, but obviously it meant that we were hoping for a low roll for the number of colours, and we ended up getting a 6, so all of a sudden this challenge just got a whole lot harder. First colour we got was yellow, and the second colour was pink, and then our third colour was actually gold, so that is our metal colour decided, which is actually very useful because that means one less actual colour that we have to deal with. For our fourth colour we got orange, for the fifth we got blue, and for the final colour we got purple. Luckily all of these colours do go really nicely together. I was just a bit unsure of how I was going to make this into a minimalist piece of jewellery, but luckily we actually got a second aesthetic for our wild card, which means that we have to go back to our aesthetic pot and pick a second one that we have to combine with the minimalist aesthetic, and we actually got hippie, which I actually feel like was the perfect choice for this because I'd already kind of had the idea to go for like a sunset theme with the colours color scheme that we got, and with the hippie aesthetic, I just kind of decided to run with that idea because it worked so perfectly. I just kind of tried to use as few beads as possible to keep with the minimalist part of the aesthetic, with my idea to just use a thin gold chain for the main part of the necklace and then attach that to a little hanging gold sun pendant with each of the colored beads hanging down underneath that. And even though I only had 5 beads that I needed to pick for this necklace, it was actually pretty difficult finding ones that worked together, because my original idea was to kind of have the beads get smaller as they go down, but the only way to do that was to use quite mismatched beads. So this was kind of the original set of beads that I was planning to use, but I actually ended up adding a bunch of other options and then kind of setting out multiple different layout options and deciding from there. Also, this was the sun pendant that I decided to use. They're so pretty. So as I said, I just laid out my 2 different options and ended up going for the smaller ones in the end, because although I did prefer the color scheme on the left, it just didn't really feel like it fit with the minimalist aesthetic as much. Also, I don't even think I mentioned that I decided to do a necklace for this, because obviously I had the choice. And to be fair, I probably could have done the same design for like any piece of jewelry, so I might have to try that for like some earrings or like a keychain or something in the future. But I don't know, I was just feeling a necklace today, so that is what I went with. So as usual, I just went through and prepped all of my beads with some gold eye pins and then attached everything together with gold jump rings. So this was the finished like pendant part of the necklace, I guess, and then obviously we just needed to attach it to a chain. So I actually ended up using a pre-made chain for this, because as you can kind of see here, the only gold chain that I had was too thick to kind of fit with the aesthetic, and also was just a bit too yellow toned. So I decided to go for this pre-made chain instead, because it matched the sun charm a lot better and also was nice and thin as well. So I literally just attached the pendant with a jump ring to the chain, and then that was the finished necklace. This was a really nice simple make today. Definitely a nice simple one if you're wanting to start making jewelry. This is a really easy layout, but if you do just want to buy this necklace, then as always it is now for sale on my Etsy. I know some of you guys can't see the link in my bio for some reason, so you can just search Eden Faith Creations if that's easier. Thank you for watching. Sorry this episode was a little bit shorter than normal, but I hope you enjoyed anyway, and I'll see you in episode 20. Welcome to episode 18 of Fate Makes Jewelry Edition, where I let the universe decide my make, and I really hope I've done this one justice, because otherwise a lot of people are gonna be mad at me. For our type of jewelry, we got a you choose, so getting a little bit of freedom for this one, and we got album cover for the aesthetic, which this is one of my favorites, so I was really happy for this one to come up. We actually got 6 colors for this make, which makes it a lot more difficult, because obviously that means that we need to find an album cover that has 6 different colors in it. We got another you choose for the first color, and for the second color we got silver, so that is our metal color decided. The first actual color that we got was pink, and then we ended up getting clear for the 4th one, which was actually pretty good, because obviously that kind of means one less color that we have to deal with. Our 5th color was purple, and finally for our 6th pick we got white, which again, similar to the clear, is kind of not really much of a color, so that actually makes things a little bit easier for us. But you know what, I was not feeling an easy make today. I wanted a bit of a challenge, so we got 2 repicks for our wild cards, and so I actually ended up using those for both of our you choose options. Don't know why I decided to make things more difficult for myself, but for our new type of jewelry we got a bracelet, which I feel like we get quite a lot, but it's also one of my favorite things to make, so I'm not really complaining. And then for our new 6th color we got yellow, which definitely would not be the color that I would have picked, but still makes for a nice palette, as long as we can obviously find an album cover that actually has all of these colors. And so on that note, our first challenge was to find the album cover that we were basing this bracelet off of. So I had looked through my liked songs on Spotify, and after scouring through all of these album covers, I finally came across the Taylor Swift Lover album, which I am not particularly a Taylor Swift fan. However, I do like a few of her songs, and this is definitely one of them. This is an absolute banger, but I'm aware that Taylor Swift fans are some of the craziest people on earth. I know that because my best friend Jade is an absolute diehard Taylor Swift fan and will probably go on a psychotic rampage if I do this bracelet injustice. So I had a look on Pinterest for some inspo, and I don't know how I didn't click earlier, but obviously Taylor Swift is known for the friendship bracelets that everyone was making last year, so I figured it was only right for me to make this bracelet in kind of a friendship bracelet style. So I actually decided to use my letter beads to spell out lover for this bracelet before going through all the rest of my beads to see what else that we were working with. Also, I did kind of forget that the blue in the album cover wasn't actually one of the colors that we picked, so I did accidentally use a few blue beads in this make, but only a few. You don't even notice, it's fine, but sorry about that. So here was our lovely bead soup, and it was looking fun at this point. Like, this is very much like childhood bracelet making, so I was very much enjoying this. For the bracelet design, I actually kind of decided to go for like 3 bracelets that would then be braided together into one chunkier bracelet. So I drew out a little design for each of the 3 sort of mini bracelets that I wanted to make. As usual, this did end up slightly changing, but you will see. So I started laying out each of my 3 strands onto my bead design board. The heart and the star strands were pretty easy, but the actual like main lover part of the bracelet, I didn't really know what to do with it, so this is just kind of the design that I went with. Just kind of messed around with different placements until I liked how it looked, and I also decided to add a little music symbol charm as well. I have no idea what it's called. I don't know anything about music, I'm sorry. To actually start off the bracelet making, I cut off 3 long pieces of beading wire, and then I just basically attached all of those together using a crimp bead, which this whole process of starting and finishing your bracelets like this, I will be doing a tutorial for in my next episode of my beginner's guide to jewelry making, so follow if you want to stick around around for that. And then from this point, it was pretty much just a case of threading all the beads on, so just doing it one strand at a time. And then once I'd finished each strand, I would just tie a little knot at the end, but only like a really loose knot because we will need to untie this later. This was the first strand all finished, and then I moved on to the heart one, which I actually kind of had to change the design for this because the seed beads that I was using were actually too small, and like the hole in the heart beads was actually too big to where it just overlapped, and so all of the heart beads would move around basically, so I had to switch to some bigger ones. But then I just really didn't like how these beads look, so finally I switched to some little mini pearls, so third time's a charm. And then I just did the final strand, which was nice and easy, and this is what the final 3 strands were looking like. So then it was just time to attach everything together. So I braided each of the strands just as a normal braid, and then just finished off at the other end with a crimp bead. Again, I'll do a whole separate tutorial on this because it is way too long to include in this video. I attached my clasp, and then the final step was just to add on the little music note symbol, and then here was the finished bracelet. I think it's really cute, but obviously Taylor Swift fans, I'm sure you will let me know in the comments if you like this or not. I hope I did a good job. This is now up for sale on my Etsy if you want to buy this. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in episode 19.
I've been wanting to do this for years. Let's build a pumpkin person. I've never done this, but for me, Halloween is the holiday where you get to experiment and try something a little different, so let's see how this goes. I started by taking a photo and just testing some things out in Photoshop. I thought it'd be cool if he had a jack-o'-lantern face, but then once I saw it, I thought, I like black eyes more. So I found some buttons, and I put them in. I gave him some teeth made out of pumpkin seeds. They're like a little creepy, but also a little cute, and I like that. Then I built his body. I used wood inside for the structure, and screws to hold everything in place. Alright, he's looking great. Time to dress him up. I usually restrain myself at this stage, but it's Halloween. Let's get fancy. Here's some corn in case he has to feed some ravens. I tried sewing a cape out of leaves, and I liked it, but I preferred this simpler version out of oak leaves. I tried this collar, but again, I liked oak leaves more here too. I wasn't sure if he should have hair, so for fun, I put it to a vote, and the people spoke. More oak leaves. I asked for some name suggestions, and you guys had a million great ideas. So here he is, introducing Lord Gordon. Get it? He's a gourd. Happy Halloween, everyone.
There once was an alchemist who loved a sorceress, and for her he bottled the stars. This delightful duo was ordered as a wedding present for the commissioner's brother and bride-to-be, who should be saying I do right about now. The commissioner mentioned that she really loves the storytelling aspect of the Mushlings and how they're able to capture this whole world in a little scene, take you to this moment in time, and really wanted to pull that into these pieces as well. Not only have them be a doll in representation of the bride and groom, but to paint a little story based off of their personality traits and special interests. According to his sister, David is a little bit messy, but very clever and marches to the beat of his own drum. His character is inspired by a little alchemist whose pockets are jam-packed full of all the little bits and bobs he needs to work his craft, paying special attention to the little pocket watch, which is actually set to the time of their wedding at 1:30 p.m. His coloration is inspired by his favorite creature, which is a fox. His bride Joy is also very intelligent. She's currently studying anthropology and is really into plants and ancient civilizations. She's also known to create fantasy ecosystems for fun. For her design, we decided to go with a bookish sorceress kind of vibe and gave her a big book of spells. But instead of it feeling like a perfectly curated book of spells, I wanted it to have more of a field note kind of vibe to it. Something that she is jotting down notes as they're going and the plants that they're finding, the spells that they're experimenting with. Something that's been evolving with them along the way. Some fun little details that I managed to snuggle into these pages are, of course, the cover page, which features today's date. There is one that depicts their tummy gems, and the final page is an illustration of the bottle, which they use to bottle the stars, and some little field notes that she jotted down in there with that. Her coloration is inspired by her favorite creature, which is a wolf, and we went with a sort of blue midnight moon aesthetic. The commissioner had also requested that the dolls feature little nuances of each other in their designs. So the alchemist has his blue bottle of stars at his hip, and the sorceress has this beautiful glowing orange lantern staff. I definitely went all out on these accessories. I was having such a good time. You know, when you were little and you were doing imaginary play and you needed some sort of something for your little character or your creature, and you would make it out of whatever you could find around the house. That's what this took me back to. My inner artist, my little inner child artist, was such at play with every aspect of this, especially when it came down to this little chest of trinkets. I had a ball creating this little box of trinkets and all the little bits and accessories that go within it. Here is the little pocket watch that I was talking about. I wanted to incorporate little bits of Joy's doll into this case as well. So there is a star and a little bit of greenery from some herbs or some type of plant matter that she's collected. Also, special mention to the opal that you see in this case and featured on the Alchemist chest. These were actually donated to the project by the groom's mother, so they are a very special touch. But that little chest is it's definitely my current favorite. I know I say that all the time, it's my new favorite accessory, but they just keep, look at it, they just keep getting cuter. How do you not love this? It is my favorite thing. It also, for some reason, is kind of giving me Akatar vibes, you know. I'm not really sure why or what it is. There's just something about it that's pulling out a little bit of that nuance to me. Probably because I'm re-listening to the series right now and Feyre loves to paint on everything. I'm not sure. These guys also feature my most meticulous costuming to date. I feel like I'm really starting to understand the proportions of the mushlings and how clothing would sit naturally on this form. It's been really helpful for creating dimension and movement within their clothing pieces. Before, not having a defined waistline per se had really kind of tripped me up in how I created my designs. But I've realized how to counterbalance that and create these really beautiful shapes. David and Joy, unbeknownst to you, your clever sister has tricked you into naming these two. So without further ado, please help me welcome into the world Sorel and his lovely companion, Valerian. From the bottom of my heart, deepest congratulations on this joyous day. I wish you many years of magic, wonder, and adventure.
These are ceramic paper stars, and while I absolutely love them, the reality is most people can't make them at home because most people don't have a kiln. So let me show you how to make polymer paper stars. So first thing I did was go to Michael's, and you may be drawn to a color, but I actually love using translucent clays like this pearl opalescent color, and I also picked up a glow-in-the-dark as well because it's also semi-transparent. Then you're going to need paper stars, of course. And yes, I just used the exact same paper stars that I would use in my ceramic paper stars. But you want to use prettier colors because, again, we picked semi-translucent clays. So the prettier the clay, the prettier the stars. Now you're just going to do exactly what I did with my ceramic paper stars. I don't know where the clip for this went, but you just make little circles and then wrap it around the star. I used a silicone tool to kind of smooth it on nice. You barely use any. You could probably make like 200 stars or something with a pack. Then you just put them into the oven at 275 for 15 minutes and you have stars. Look how cute. And of course, look at the glow-in-the-dark ones. They look awesome. This is just after the oven without being glazed, and here they are after being glazed. I love how they look. Y'all think the ceramic ones look edible. These look even more edible to me, but they come out super cute. They don't make the exact same sound as the ceramic, but it's a pretty satisfying sound, and I think they look really great. And then you can turn them into cool things like foam charms. Wow, fun. Okay, go make cool stuff. This game has different names all over the world, and in America we call it Mancala. And then I made this and decided to call it Frogcala. But if we changed the pieces and made them this, would it be Catcala? So I got a bunch of tiny cat heads made and a bunch of them underglazed in a bunch of different colors. After underglaze, it was time for glaze. Just made some little kitty lollipops, dipped them in Pepto-Bismol, as one does. I'll make a video on this style soon. thanks to one of my commenters for reaching out to me with this idea. Then it was into the kiln, and y'all, this was my longest kiln load yet. It took 33 minutes to get this kiln loaded, but we got everything in there all nice and snug, and then next day, opened it up, looking beautiful. We scooped up all the kitties and got them in their bath, and here they are. Now, one thing that you may be noticing is that every single cat is different. All 48 kitties have different fur colors, patterns, eye colors, noses, ear colors, everything. I tried to do a wide variety of cat patterns just so I can try to represent as many people's kitties as possible. This is by far the most detailed set I've ever done. And here's the game. Wait, no, I think something's missing. Hold on, just give me a second. Let me just do a little bit of this, and there we go. A kitty board to match the kitties. So here it is. Do we call it cat kala or kitty kala?
I was looking for a color scheme and I saw this picture of those berries. And I said, pretty. I don't want to draw berries, but I'll do the colors. Also, look at this weird paper. Are you confused? Are you scared? I heard about using velour paper is what it's called. I just got it on Amazon. It's literally like kids craft, like construction paper vibes, but it's like this. Anyways, the oil pastels, because apparently it's great texture for the oil pastels, and it is. Oh my, how they glide, you know. Oh, look at it in the sunshine. Can you see? What? It's so satisfying and fun. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. It really is. And I'm just going for it. I'm just do. It's like I'm drawing on a blanket, but also that could be kind of fun. It's also a little weird to look at and weird to work with, but also it was amazing. Like, look at that. I don't even have to work to do anything. It's just there. It just soaks up that oil pastel. And it's not too fuzzy or anything. Like, it doesn't get in my way, and it still blends. Oh my gosh, look at them. Look at those guys. Look at those flowers. So colorful and bright. Someone once commented that my disarray upset them, yet they couldn't stop watching my videos. And if you find yourself to be a particularly persnickety person when it comes to tidiness, things making sense, I need you to buckle up. I need you to hold on tight, because this is going to scare you. But look, we're having fun. Now, as you can see, I am just throwing paint on the canvas, and I myself was scared. You saw my face. But I'm adding in weird little cloud blobs, some little just dots everywhere, a line here and there. This is all acrylic paint, okay? The vision for this one was just a swirly sunset sky with clouds like I've drawn digitally, but I haven't used acrylic paint in forever, and I was like, let me try it. And I wanted to use a palette knife because I never used that and I don't know how to use it, but like I had fun. And then it was sitting on the shelf and I was like, what do I do with it? I was like, okay, fine, I'll add grass. And then I was like, okay, and then I'll add flowers. So true. Here's our little flower field. And then I added oil pastels because, here I am marveling over my own work. And yeah, I'm adding oil pastels. And at this point I was like, okay, these on top of that textured acrylic paint is difficult. It's not the greatest, but like, we're going to figure it out. It's fine. It's okay. I just wanted to add just abstract blobs everywhere in different patterns. And here I am, I'm continuing to do so. I added little white flowers in the sky, kind of near the clouds, as if they are little flower clouds. Isn't that precious? And then, this is where I loved the flowers. I added the tube paint to the flowers and everything else. And then I got this green. And I said, grass! Oh my gosh, grass! Here I am thinking about adding rhinestones, and I do so. Because what have I said before? If you're thinking about adding rhinestones, you add them. You add them. There's no question. And so I'm just adding those in details everywhere. Perhaps they're little, I don't know, just more sparkle. And then I loved it when I added the blue to the clouds, because it was just like, that's what it needed. Oh, when I look at this in the sunshine. Are you kidding? I'm not. I never am. And you know that. Okay, we've been through it. Look at the colors. Oh, goodness. I feel like you can't even tell how textured it is, but I'm trying.
I see it sparkling. You can see the sparkle. It's so heavy. It is it's so heavy. Here I am showing you that it matches my sweater. That is so sweet. Here I am showing Scooby, and he said, oh, okay, don't care. I don't care. And I said, okay, I respect that. And that's totally valid. Here it is in the sunshine once more. Look, it's a rainbow over there. I didn't even mean to do that. Anyways, I also continued some of the grass up into the swirls of the sky. Did you see that? And then here are the prints. They're on my website. I did one of the whole thing horizontally, and then I did a picture of each side. So there's 2 vertical options, and they're different. And so, anyways, okay, love you so much. Bye.